Hello again, and welcome once more to Denton's Tales. The first day of February was a very important one in Celtic Ireland thousands of years ago, for not only was it one of the major pagan festivals, but it was also the feast day of one of the greatest goddesses of the Celtic pantheon. A goddess who changed her status rather considerably in later centuries, and unlike her fellow gods and goddesses, she lives on in our own time, known to the whole population, albeit in that new guise, though her new guise is almost exactly the same as her original one, which I will be talking about in a moment. It's quite a fascinating story, really. As of 2024, the 1st of February is now a public holiday here in the Republic of Ireland because it's St. Brigid's Day, dedicated to one of the three patron saints of Ireland, St. Brigid, who shares that position with St. Patrick and St. Columba. Last year, the government decided to elevate her status by giving her a public holiday, or bank holiday as it's called here, on her feast day, just as St. Patrick has his very internationally famous public holiday, St. Patrick's Day. Oh, poor old St. Columba, well, he's been left out in the cold, I'm afraid. His feast day is just, well, it's just a day like any other. I'm sorry about that, Columba. He must be so jealous. Sure, what have those two got that I haven't got? Well, whatever it is, yeah, they got it. You ain't. Oh well. But the 1st of February is also Imbolc, one of the old pagan Celtic quarter days celebrated in pre-Christian Ireland, symbolizing birth and renewal, the ushering in of the spring and driving away the dark gloom of winter, getting rid of the grey clouds, those dull grey skies, flowers will come up and bunnies will hop and, all that sort of thing. So Ireland now has a joint Christian-pagan public holiday, you could say. And of course, St. Bridget herself had been pagan for centuries before the church just popped a halo on her head and made her a saint. The other Celtic seasonal festivals were Beltane on the 1st of May, Lunacer on the 1st of August, and Samhain on the 1st of November. In Irish Gaelic, Imbolc means in the belly. Since the festival represented fertility, the ewes will be carrying the unborn lambs, and, well, hence the in the belly reference. And it was celebrated from sunset on the 1st of February to sunset on the 2nd of the month. And it was an important event, also honouring the great Celtic triple goddess Brigid, goddess of the Tuatha De Danann, the followers of the goddess Danu, and she was the daughter of their leader, Dagda. She was born at the sunrise, it was said, a maiden with fire in her head and a pillar of flame reaching up to the heavens. And she had two sisters. One was a smith and the other a healer. Though, of course, these were really just other personifications of herself, other aspects of her, but making her a trinity, maiden, smith, and healer, as indeed was the other great goddess of Celtic Ireland, the shape-shifting battle and chaos goddess, the Morrigan. Brigid's three aspects have associations with earth, air, fire, and water. She is Brigid the healer and midwife, a farrier and a craftswoman, a warrior, and the giver of inspiration, she who inspires poets and artists and all other creative persons. She was the protector of birthing women as well as women and children in general. She was the guardian of agricultural and domestic animals. She cared for nature, and the rowan tree was considered to be sacred to her. No, nobody cut down a rowan tree in ancient Ireland. Oh, no, you kept your saw very far away from rowan trees. And very bad luck to cut down one of them. She presided over fertility and rebirth, hence her connection with Imbolc. It was really her festival in that sense. And she was said to go forth on January the 31st and walk abroad across the land, spreading her blessings, people leaving out offerings for her, leaving out clothing for her to bless, and so forth. Many of her attributes, as well as ceremonies to honour her, even her feast day, would later carry over to a new faith from distant Palestine. The old gods of the Tuatha De Danann would fade away into the mists of time, but Brigid would live on, mighty Celtic goddess reinvented as a beloved Christian saint. Excuse me. But virtually unchanged in form, apart from the triple status, or in ceremony, almost identical to her former self, yet representing a new faith. The early church, you see, frequently used and adapted pagan rituals and sacred places to help the conversion of the pagan population. Oh, yes, they were thinking. They would baptize people with water from pagan sacred wells. They would build churches in or near sacred groves. So people would associate their old beliefs with the new ones. I mean, it's their water, their groves, their ceremonies. And that made conversion so much easier because the association with their original worship with the new one, of course, it kind of linked the two, and that made the conversion extremely easy. It was a quite intentional policy on behalf of the church, but it made sense. It was psychology, and years before psychology had even been invented. Well, the church got there long before Sigmund Freud. To have a great pagan goddess, to say nothing of the Imbolc festival itself, come over to their side, well, I mean, that was a great advantage. The propaganda was simply brilliant. It couldn't be better. Now, there was a genuine Brigid. Oh, yes, a real woman, not a mythological one, conveniently named Brigid, and she was said to have been born in Dundalk in the county of Louth in 451 AD and to have died in Kildare in 524 AD. Now, this Brigid had lived as a hermit before attracting other women to her and founding a convent in Kildare, and the church turned her into a Christianized version of the goddess. Reducing her personality to just one. They dropped her previous triple split personality, they popped a halo on her head, and they called her Saint Brigid. Very convenient. She retained her feast day, venerated on the same date as her pagan one, but now known as Saint Brigid's Day. So pagans would thus associate her with the former goddess. Other pagan aspects of the goddess were also Christianized, coming with her into the new faith, including her everlasting fire. It continued to burn at her sanctuary in Kildare, but tended by nuns rather than the female druids of previous years. A document from 1188 AD mentions this sacred fire. It says that it was surrounded by a hedge that no man could cross. No men are welcome here. Do not set foot beyond this point. Oh, and any man who might be foolish enough to attempt to do so will be cursed. Yes, he'd be cursed, I tell you. He would go insane, or he would die, or he might be lucky and he'd get off lightly, just be crippled for life. Yes. Do you think men weren't overly popular around there? Just a thought. But this unusual fire did more than just punish peeping toms. Oh, yes, it was said to have burned for hundreds of years, yet left no ash. Yes, not even a shovelful of ash in centuries. But strange though that may sound, it is possibly actually quite true. The fire may have been fueled by oil or tallow, and that, of course, left no ash. And the church, well, they just omitted to mention that fact to the faithful. It just sort of slipped their mind, as things do. Yes. There are later accounts of wood being used, but the ashes just vanished in that case. That story may be a bit exaggerated. The eternal flame in honour of the saint burned on until the year 1220, when the Archbishop of Dublin, he decided the whole thing was too pagan. Yes, everlasting fires, no, that's pagan stuff. They did that in ancient Rome. No, we cannot have that in holy Christian Ireland. No. And he ordered the nuns to extinguish it, which they did, but after his death they simply relit the fire. And it burned on down to the Reformation, when monastic houses were closed and the fire was permanently extinguished. But in 1993, the flame was rekindled by the Brigidine Order of Nuns at Kildare Cathedral. Lady Gregory, the co-founder, along with William Butler Yeats, of Ireland's internationally famous Abbey Theatre, in which I myself appeared. Yes, darling, I trod the boards on that very stage, said he, unashamedly blowing his own trumpet. She described Brigid in her retellings of Irish mythology as, and I quote, "a woman of poetry, and poets worshipped her, for her sway was very great and very noble, and she was a woman of healing along with that, and a woman of smith's work, and it was she who first made the whistle for the calling of one to another through the night." Yes, I bet you didn't know that one. Traditions from both the old pagan celebration of Imbolc and the Christian celebration of St. Brigid's Day can be found in the modern Imbolc celebrations. One very well-known example being the St. Brigid's cross, which is made from twisted straw or reeds. And here is one of them. This is the famous St. Brigid's cross. Today, traditions associated with Imbolc include the weaving of the Brigid's cross, and these are hung over doorways and hearths to bring protection and blessings, just as they have been for centuries. And another common practice is the making of a so-called bridie. Now, the bridie is a small doll representing Brigid. These and the crosses have become very popular Irish souvenirs for tourists. Oh yeah, the tourists, they simply love them, and you'll find them in every tourist shop. The story of the cross was that the saint made it from straw while she was converting a dying man, explaining the symbol of the cross to him, though the Romans wouldn't have recognized what she made as looking much like their execution instrument. I mean, you couldn't really nail somebody to... Anyway. But the straw or reed things, of course, well, they were made for centuries before her time in Ireland. Toys for children and so on. The weaving of straw things went back many centuries. But it is seen today as the symbol of Brigid. So much of her was, of course, just a copy of her former pagan self, the things she did, her attributes. Very little of it was new, other than her role as abbess of a convent. And though she became the mother saint of Ireland, Mary of the Gale, she was called, there is little real historical fact about her, because early Irish texts do little more than repeat her pagan goddess attributes, her patronage of healing, smithcraft, animals, fertility, and so on, making her seem hardly more than a Christian veneer on a pagan goddess, which indeed, of course, she was. Later Christian rituals and observances, well, they still followed the earlier Celtic ones. Like, well, she was said to travel across the country on St. Brigid's Eve and visit people's homes, bestowing blessings on them, just as the goddess had done on the eve of Imbolc. And in hopes of getting the saint's blessings, people did exactly the same things that they had done for the goddess, making beds for her, leaving out food and drink, greatly appreciated, I'm sure, by the local wildlife, as well as leaving out clothing for her to bless. The saint was invoked for their protection of the home, the livestock, for women, just as had the goddess, and feasts were held. Another great tradition, of course, of Celtic times. I mean, in Celtic Ireland, a feast was held regardless of what the occasion. It could be anything. It could be the cat's birthday. Oh, sure, let's have a feast, lads! Like, oh, they loved feasts. Imbolc was also seen as the time when the Chaliach, the old hag of Celtic folklore, would go out gathering wood for her fire, and if she wanted to prolong the winter, oh, she loved the winter. Oh, yeah, she revelled in the dark grey skies and the snow and the wind. She just loved that. Well, if she wanted to prolong that, she would make the day beautifully sunny and nice, a perfect day for gathering firewood to make the winter last longer. And she could do things like that. So, if Imbolc is a dreadful, freezingly cold wintry day, dark clouds lowering overhead with driving rain and gale-force winds, well, don't complain about it. The ancient Irish would have rejoiced about it because you see, that meant the Chaliach must have overslept. Yes, he overslept, and spring is around the corner. Flowers will bloom, birds will sing, bees will buzz around, rabbits will bounce, and lambs will gambol. Yes, spring has sprung, and Brigid has won over the Chaliach. So given the sort of weather we have in Ireland, just keep that in mind. There was a genuine Brigid. She was an abbess of a convent, which seems true enough, but she was greatly overlaid with her pagan forebears' characteristics. one suggestion I've seen is that she was actually a druid, and that she tended the everlasting fire to the goddess, but converted to Christianity and set up a convent, but retaining much of the practices that she had used in her former life. It's quite possible, I suppose. It's an interesting idea, if nothing else. Many of the old traditions of Imbolc associated with both goddess and saint have, of course, died out nowadays, though many religious people still observe it as Lady Day and the following day as Candlemas. And some of the old traditions have been revived by neo-pagans and Wiccans. Now, the latter, they have incorporated much of her into their practices. And, of course, as of 2024, her feast day is officially recognised by the Irish state as Imbolc St. Brigid's Day. Celtic goddess and Christian saint going forward hand in hand, you might say. There are, of course, many stories about Brigid, though a lot of them are obviously allegorical or simply fantasy, such as St. Brigid's cloak. Oh, now I'd love to know who the tailor was who made that one for her. When she asked a local king for land to build her convent on, he refused. He didn't want any part of strange women building things in his territory. But then she said, all she wanted was the amount of land that her cloak could cover. Now, the amount of land her cloak could cover. Oh, so she asked, could she have that? And the king looked at the cloak, and it's not very big. And he obviously wasn't the sharpest card in the pack, because he never suspected that this could be a trick question. Why would someone ask for the amount of land they could cover with their cloak to build it? Anyway, he agreed. She laid her cloak on the ground, and I'm sure the king was saying, she's not getting very much, is she? But then she told 4 of her nuns to each take a corner of it and run. And they did. They ran off in 4 directions, and the cloak expanded. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger until it covered acres and acres of land, enough for her to build her convent. Actually, 2, actually. That's an interesting cloak. Another story was that she used to turn her bath water into beer for visiting clergy. Yes, bath water into beer. It says something about the clergy of the day. After all, that was rather a prodigious quantity of beer. Oh, would you look at that? There's a load of monks and priests, dozens of them, all lined up, going into the convent. Be the holy, this bishop too. And if it isn't the cardinal himself? Oh, sure, that's nothing. 'Tis only the abbess having a bath. Yes, bath day must have been quite popular, though I'm not sure I'd care for beer somebody had taken a bath in. As to the truth of the tale, well, it does smack of wishful thinking, perhaps. Yes. Another tale has it that she fell from her horse and sustained a rather bad head wound, blood flowing into a nearby puddle, mixing with the water, and then 2 deaf sisters touched the water. Though why they want to stick their hands into the resulting blood and water mix, I really don't know, but they did, and they were instantly cured. On another occasion, a group of bishops came to Kildare, and Brigid's nuns had to cater for them. Now, why they came, I don't know. Maybe they thought it was bath day and they wanted to right old booze up. But anyway, they did. And there wasn't enough milk. Shock horror. There wasn't enough milk for the bishops. The cows had already been milked. What to do? Did Brigid just, take a bath and save the day? No, she did what any good saint would do. She fell on her knees and prayed. And lo and behold, an angel came down and instructed her to milk the cows. Milk the cows? But, they're dry. They've already been milked, said she. Well, milk them again, said he. And she did. Well, not only did the cows produce milk, well, they couldn't stop. They filled Brigid's bucket. The nuns brought more buckets, and they filled those. Nobody could turn the blasted things off. They just went on lactating like the clappers. The milk was gushing, and it formed a loch, as a lake is called here in Ireland, forever afterwards known as the Loch of the New Milk. Yes. Well, at least the bishops had plenty of milk. They could have gone swimming in it or rowed a boat across it. As a child, she was said to have given all her mother's stock of butter to needy people, which is a lovely thing to do. Yes, it was just absolutely lovely, though her mother didn't appreciate it very much. But Brigid simply prayed, and the butter was restored. A relic of St. Brigid, said to be a fragment of her skull, has just been returned to County Kildare only a couple of days ago, after over 1,000 years, in a procession led by 3 children on horses representing the knights who, according to legend, secretly took the skull fragment overseas. It is believed that Brigid was buried beside the main altar in her monastic church in Kildare, which then became a pilgrimage site that brought pilgrims from right across Europe. She was extremely popular. But around the year 800 AD, her body was moved north to Downpatrick for fear of Viking raids, and she was reburied beside St. Patrick himself. Yes, and St. Columba, but who cares about him? But it was an unmarked grave for security reasons. However, it was discovered in the 12th century, and the saint was enshrined in 1186. However, that shrine was destroyed in the 13th century, and according to tradition, Irish knights rescued a fragment of her skull, and they took it to a small town near Lisbon in Portugal, where it is still venerated in the local church. During the 1930s, Brigidine nuns obtained a piece of the relic, and they returned it to Ireland, and now, more than 70 years later, it has finally returned to Kildare. So on this day of Imbolc, or St. Brigid's Day, take a choice, when ancient tradition meets latter-day faith, I wish you a good day, and goodbye until the next video. I hope you enjoyed this one. Goodbye for now.